Today we're talking about boundaries, and sometimes I do joke about it with my friends, but I've been learning to enforce and have in my life as a recovering people pleaser. There's nothing wrong with being a nice person, but there is something wrong with being a nice, kind giver that's always burnt out and is always feeling resentment towards people because they have no boundaries. I find that a lot of nice people weaponize their niceness at the back of my head, in my subconscious, with the hope that number one, they would like me back, number two, that they would stay. Hi guys, welcome to Mochunkstv and welcome to another installment of Chit Chat with Mo, where we have controversial debates, honest conversation and so much more. Today we're talking about boundaries. Like, if you've been a fan of MCTV for a long time, you've been watching this show for a while, you will know that boundaries is like been a running joke for a long time. Like, we'd always be like, nope, boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. And that's because it's something that I've been learning. And sometimes I do joke about it with my friends, but I've been learning to enforce and have in my life as a recovering people pleaser, as a recovering overgiver, as a recovering miss. I am too nice to people and they take it for granted. Those of you that are in that category, come forward. We are marking register. Just come like that. Just come like that. We're all in this together, okay? Oh, crew. I've actually definitely healed from it. And although till today I still have my weakness in this area, but it's something that I'm intentional. It's not natural for me to have boundaries. It's not natural for me to be a bit sharper with people. It's not natural for me to say no, but it's gotten easier the more that I've practiced it. And a lot of people commented on the last video that was quite intimate about, why I left my parents' house. And people have asked, and some people have privately messaged me as well, Mo, how did you muster up the strength to do such a thing? Especially when you love the people that you leave. And, I can't respond to everybody, but hopefully you guys can come back to this video and I've answered your question. But if I still don't, do comment and I'll see what I can do again. But the biggest thing about me recovering from being a people pleaser, the biggest thing that helps me is learning to have boundaries. So I'm just going to go through what are boundaries and why do you need to have them. Boundaries are your limits with people, your emotional limits, your physical limits, your spiritual limits. If you're someone that, for example, I don't know, you bake cakes, you might like to bake 2 cakes a day, but there might be someone that requests for 10. Your boundary is 2. That's what you can accommodate. That's your capacity. Everybody has a capacity. Some people can give more, some people give less naturally. So I think the biggest thing I want to mention in this video before I even start is that there is absolutely nothing wrong with being a giver. There's nothing wrong with being a nice person. There's nothing wrong with being a kind person. But there is something wrong with being a nice, kind giver that's always burnt out and is always feeling resentment towards people because they have no boundaries. So the problem isn't that you're too nice. That isn't what's causing the resentment. The problem isn't that you're a giver. The problem isn't that you're kind. It's because you don't have boundaries. That's why resentment happens. Why are boundaries needed? To avoid resentment, to ensure that you're giving because you want to give and not under duress, and not because you want to manipulate people into liking you, for example. Which is bringing me on to my next point. Why do we not have boundaries? And I think for me, definitely, there was this need to be seen as nice, to be perceived as nice, to be seen as kind and loving and, kumbaya, and I had a very, even till today, I have a very cartoony view on life, that everybody's lovely, everybody's kind, nobody will take advantage of me. But of course, over and over in my life, I did see people taking the pee, with my kindness and constantly asking because they knew I wouldn't say no. And that's not their fault. Takers don't have boundaries, so givers must. Otherwise, they're going to take from you. And you can't blame them because guess what? You did not say no. You didn't have a boundary. You didn't enforce a boundary. I think a lot of people don't actually know their limitations. So I think that's why we falter when it comes to boundaries. We don't know where is the point that I cross over from helping someone to being burnt out or helping people. That's the thing about people that don't have boundaries. You're trying to be everything to everyone and it's not possible. I remember at the beginning of 2019, I actually made this tweet and I said, this year I'm going to try to stop being everything to everyone. It's not humanly possible. You're not God. You're not omnipresent. You're not omniscient. Like you just can't be everyone's therapist, mom, friend, girlfriend. You can't be everything to everyone, and you need to start learning to have those boundaries. Otherwise you will, like I said, feel burnt out. Another reason why we don't have boundaries is that there is a link, I believe, with people pleasing and manipulation. Being manipulative doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad person. Anyone can be manipulative, and people can be subconsciously manipulative as well. Some people do set out to manipulate people and they know exactly what they're doing. But I find that a lot of nice people weaponize their niceness. I'm on that table, so I'm not just coming at you, okay? I would, in the past, be nice to people at the back of my head, in my subconscious, with the hope that, number one, they would like me back. Number two, that they would stay. That was rooted in my abandonment and rejection issues. And also so that I would get back. Some of you are on that table. So people have rejection issues, people have abandonment issues, some people from their childhood. I was a daughter mom, like I explained in my why I left my parents' house. So I was often left to be independent. I used to search for acceptance from people outside unknowingly. So I would do things for people in hopes that I hope you like me back. I hope you choose me, and I hope you stay. And that's really heavy for a lot of you to hear, because you've probably seen patterns in your life where in cases where those people don't choose you, they aren't nice to you back and they don't stay, you feel very hurt, because it's like, whoa, I did all that for you and you couldn't even stay, you couldn't even like me back, you shouldn't even choose me. So that's when you need to question, if you've been having those kind of situations, why you're being kind to those people in the first place. Is it really because you're kind, or because you want to be needed, or because you want to be liked, you want to be chosen? These are the questions that you need to ask yourselves. Am I really this nice person that I say I am? Or am I subconsciously trying to manipulating people into choosing, staying and liking me? Just going to let you sit with that for a second, okay? Because these are the things that when you start asking yourself these questions and you journal as you watch this video, if you'd like, just write as I'm asking these questions, and you can of course go away and detail it more. But these are really important questions to ask yourself. And I think one of the biggest ways that I began to get better, of course, I went to counselling. And I know there'll be a few comments about point me to your counsellor. I'm going to put it in the description box down below. I actually met this lady at an event, and she was also speaking that night. I was already a speaker at the time, but I still had some issues with crew. And I remember when I'd experienced something that really hurt me. Ooh, oh my God. Like I said, sometimes you don't know your limits. That situation highlighted to me my limits and the points that I can get to when, people can be nice, but there's a point that where you push them. I got to that point. So much so that I was silently angry. That silent kind of anger. I was there. So got on the phone to her and, had these sessions with her and another lady as well. But I would definitely recommend this one because she's a professional. Of course, it's going to cost you some money. Okay, so I'll put it in the description box. You guys can contact her. So she really helped me to highlight some things within myself. And for example, remember I mentioned that, I saw these things showing up in my relationships, especially with the opposite sex, and how I would allow men to treat me and walk all over me, but I would still be nice to them. I would not enforce any boundaries. I would not enforce any consequences for the things they would do. So they would just carry on, taking the pee. And, she spoke to me and, helped me understand that you need to, number one, cancel your need to be liked. You don't have to be liked by everybody, but it's very important to be respected. Like, being liked is nice, don't get me wrong, but you're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. So just cancel the need to be seen as nice, kind, loving by everyone, because you can be all that to everybody and somebody will still nitpick your character. So just cancel the need to be liked and be yourself. And part of being yourself is sharing your needs and your wants with people, sharing the do's and the don'ts, that when you cross this line, I don't like it. That way you will stop being violated all the time, because sometimes people carry on hurting you because you haven't expressed that I don't like this, or I'm uncomfortable with that. So to them, it's just, oh, they have a huge capacity. Let me just keep throwing things out them because you haven't used your voice. So cancel that need to be seen as nice, kind, loving. Also, redefine what nice, kind, and loving is. Sometimes we have a misconception of what love is. We think love accepts every and anything that's thrown at it. No, it does not. Love doesn't always say yes. Sometimes love says no. And this was a very big thing for me as well, growing up in relationship with men, especially, and, requesting for things that I didn't want to do. I didn't want, by reason of where our level of relationship was, for example, taking things that they weren't entitled to by means of their level of commitment to me. And because I still wanted them to see me as nice and loving, I'd give it to them anyway, but it's like they haven't earned that part of you, Mo. They haven't earned that level of intimacy with you, Mo. They haven't earned that level of access. That's a big thing. That level of access to you, but you're giving it to them so they consider you kind, nice, in some cases, wifey material, that, she would make a nice girlfriend because she's my peace. She never expresses when something's not right, but there's ways to express things respectfully without necessarily causing fights or arguments. And that's something I'm even learning today. Like I said, this is a whole process. You learn things as you go along, but definitely it was so bad before, like up until about a year or two ago, when I said enough is enough and I started seeing my counselor. But yeah, cancel that need. Understand what love means. Love sometimes says no. Love has boundaries. Sometimes for me to love you better, I need to be good. I can't pour out from an empty cup. If you're constantly draining me and I don't ever say no, number one, I'm going to hate you. Number two, when it comes to the next day, I can't give you my best because I gave everything yesterday. So redirect your thoughts about what love is. Love doesn't always say yes. Sometimes love says no. Sometimes love says this is my limit. I can help you up until here. And then I'm going to go home and be with myself. Okay? Value yourself first. That's another way to get better at setting boundaries. You have to value yourself first. You have to love yourself more than whatever the person or situation is. Otherwise, you keep choosing them before you choose yourself. And of course, some people might say it's a good trait to be selfless, and it's a good trait to, help other people. No one is saying it's not good to help or be selfless, but sometimes, honey, you do have to be selfish, especially if you're an overgiver and you're burnt out from being an overgiver. You do have to reel it back in. Value yourself first. Prioritize yourself first. Prioritize your time first before you start giving it out to everybody else. Another way to get better at setting boundaries. This one, was a game changer for me. Understand that no matter what you do for people, they might still leave you anyway. So why are you killing yourself to make them stay? Just ask yourself that question. Think about all the times you did all of that, but you did the most, sis or bro. You did the absolute, and they still went. Now think about some people in your life that you might not have done much for, yet they choose you every single day. Doesn't that tell you that people stay if they want to stay? Doesn't that tell you that people love if they want to love? Doesn't that tell you that people choose you if they want to choose you? Of course, we do things for the people that we love. But sometimes you do the most for people and it's not enough to make them stay if they don't have that choice in mind, if they don't have you as a priority in mind, if they don't decide within themselves that actually I love this person and I want to stay with them. We see this in a lot of relationships, auditioning for someone's love, doing the most when they haven't even committed to you, trying to make them stay. But let them choose you because they choose you first. Don't calculate it too much because that's not real love. But just, as a recovering people pleaser, watch it a bit. Watch when you start doing the most for people and ask yourself why you're doing that. Are you trying to make them stay? Valid questions to ask yourselves, okay? Now, how to know your limits. Now, I didn't know my limits until I started prioritizing and creating time for myself. I live a very busy schedule. Right now, in this season of my life, I'm working a day job as well as I'm managing my YouTube channel. In the previous year, I was freelancing as a videographer and managing YouTube. So there's always a few things going on. And of course, pre-corona, doing speaking engagements and all of that, there's a lot going on. So I was a very busy person, but despite being busy, there would still be people wanting my time, attention, me to do things for them. But the minute I started prioritizing me time, as in my rest time, my downtime, before I dished that out to anybody else, it was much easier for me to say no. Because sometimes your free time is seen as your available time. My free time is me time before it's anyone else's. And if after me time there isn't any time for anybody else, I don't feel guilty. The minute you start to prioritize yourself, you prioritize yourself. Number one, you create time for yourself to rest from whatever activity might have taken place. Then after your me time, because you're now a full cup that can now pour out, then you create time for other people. If you have a child, that's your responsibility. You have a husband, they become part of your responsibility. But even then, still, you first, so you can be a great mom or wife to them. So those are different. I'm not married here. I don't know how it works, but I know with children, are really demanding. That one there is a bit more techie, but even then, I think you time before anybody else's. So when you create time for yourself, you know a limit has been crossed when it goes into you time, or it begins to hurt the level of energy you even have for the activity that you're being asked for. Now you know your limits. You've created time for yourself. You've killed the need to be seen as kind, loving, and all of that. Now you want to start enforcing some boundaries. It's going to take practice. I'm not going to lie to you. It's hard. It's really hard saying no to the people that you love. It's hard saying no to people that you don't want to leave you. But again, this is where valuing yourself first comes in. You choose yourself. And the fact that you would always choose yourself above anybody else means that regardless of the consequence of them possibly walking away, you are okay. Okay? And that's another thing with boundaries. When you do start enforcing them, those things that you were preventing people walking away, or you were trying to prevent people rejecting you, it's going to happen. Let me just tell you that right now. And you need to be okay with it. So number one is that you need to communicate your boundaries. Okay? Let them know these are my wants, my likes, my needs, my likes and my dislikes. Please don't do this, or please do this. Now, this is where a lot of empaths or people that have struggled with people pleasing might fail, or they might want to stop. Number two is communicate again. When people see that you have a kind nature, they will push that boundary. And this is why it's harder for people that are seen as nice or kind or gentle to enforce boundaries. So sometimes they just allow people to walk all over them anyway. Because people that are a bit more stern, people that are a bit more mean, will try and cross that boundary. So they've heard you. Either they don't respect you enough to enforce it or to listen immediately. They're going to try and push. So you communicate again. Give them a second chance. You communicate again. If this violation of this boundary you've communicated once, communicate again, but this time include the consequence. In a sense of, I have told you this before. If you continue to violate this boundary, this will happen. If the boundary gets violated again, 3 strikes and you're out. Okay, now the consequence must be enforced. And again, this is where a bit of ruthlessness has to come into it, unfortunately. In a sense of, you've now violated this boundary multiple times. I've told you the consequence and you still wanted to violate it anyway. Now my consequence is either this friendship has to be from afar now, or I don't need you in my life anymore. Different people have different consequences for the things that people do to them. So you need to enforce those consequences at that point. What you'll find is that you will start to file people out. The great thing about boundaries is that it keeps the good in and it keeps the bad out. In a sense of not good and bad people, good for you, bad for you. Boundaries vary from people to people. So what might be a boundary to me might not be a boundary for Susan. So Susan might not kick someone out of their life for staying at her house, for example, past 10 p.m. when she's got work the next day. That might be fine. Susan might be a freelancer and she doesn't really mind, or she might be a night crawler, she doesn't really mind. So when I say good and bad, I'm not saying good point blank. They're not good for me. They're not good for my space. They don't fit into my boundaries. So the great thing about boundaries is that it keeps the good in and it takes the bad out for me or for you. And that's person specific, okay? Another thing to highlight, just before I round up, is that context matters. So boundaries might vary from person to person, for example. My sister Sophie, who is very dear to me because of her age and also because I looked after her when I was growing up, there's that bond. Again, I spoke about this in Why I Left My Parents' House. She can call me at 2 a.m. In fact, any of my siblings can call me at 2 a.m. and I'm going to pick up. Some random person who I haven't spoken to in 2 years calls me at 2 a.m. If peradventure I wake up and I see the call, I'm rolling over back to sleep. And I know that sounds crazy, but like I said, it's person to person, depending on how close they are to you. Is this my inner circle, for example? We all have time for the people that we love, and we all make time for people that we love, but we can't make time for everybody. I've come to really accept that about myself, is that I can have a few high quality friendships and relationships, but I can't be a high quality friend to everybody in a sense of my level of availability and access. So it's person specific and it's also context specific, okay? There are some contexts where, you can bend and be flexible. So for example, even with the same example I gave, someone I haven't spoken to in 2 years, if my instinct is like, this person might need me right now, that's context specific. Or I've seen that maybe on social media, they might be having a breakdown and they call, I'm going to pick up, so context specific. Maybe I was really busy and they genuinely needed my help. This was in a situation where they were taking the mic and they always needed me there. Context, think about the context, but don't create context, because with recovering people pleasers, it can be a bit funny because you can sometimes create context that is not there. Oh, they need me, but really they'll be fine even if you weren't there. So yeah, those are my tips when it comes to boundaries, how to enforce them, how to communicate them, and also that you can be a tiny bit flexible. But I would say when you're practicing, start off being very rigid, and a lot of people won't like it, but it's necessary for you, for your growth and for your development. Practice saying no. No is not a taboo word. No doesn't make you unkind. No simply means no. Without my voice and being able to say no, I violated myself. I allowed people to violate me for so long, physically, emotionally. Not being able to say no is a huge issue. And again, resentment builds up. Be comfortable with the word no and be comfortable with not having to add an extra explanation. Sometimes people will ask, keep it really brief. Don't over-explain yourself. This is your boundary. It's your life. It's you keeping yourself sane. And also, don't let people manipulate you into thinking you're unkind or being unloving. Sometimes when takers are so used to taking from you, they will, like I said, push back. They will ask you why you're acting this way. You're not acting in any way. You're finally learning to protect themselves, even the way they would. Maybe it's just their natural, their natural self to have boundaries and to be able to say no easier. But you need to learn. Practice it and it will make perfect. Now, my question to you guys is, have you ever had to set a boundary with a loved one, so a family or friend? What was that process like? Was there pushback? Did they respect your boundaries? If there are situations where people haven't respected your boundaries, what were the consequences? What was your response to that? Did you let them continually walk all over you, or did you give them the deuces? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And that's all I really have for you guys in terms of Chit Chat with Mo. Make sure that's if you liked it. Do share it with your friends and also subscribe to this channel for more. Until next time, guys, peace and love. Peace and chunks.